Okay, so we all pretty much know the story of Robinson Crusoe, right? It's the ultimate tale of survival. But what if I told you that if you look a little closer, past all the shipwrecks and the island adventures, there's a much more fascinating story going on. It's not just about surviving nature, it's a deep dive into the psychology of power. So, let's get into it.
Let me ask you this. Imagine you're a king. You have absolute power over your own domain. Total control, all the resources you could want, no rivals. What's the one thing you're still missing? What do you actually need?
You got it, a subject. And for Robinson Crusoe, who had been isolated for years and years on his island, this wasn't just some political idea. No, it was a desperate psychological need. Think about it. Without someone there to recognize his authority, his very identity as a king, heck, as a person, was starting to completely fall apart.
So after years of being totally alone, Crusoe goes ahead and declares himself the king and lord of the entire island. But it's a hollow title, isn't it? His identity is incredibly fragile, on the verge of what's called subjective dissolution. That's just a fancy way of saying your sense of who you are starts to crumble without other people around to confirm it. A king with no subjects isn't really a king. He's just a lonely man talking to himself. This quote really hits the nail on the head. Crusoe needs some kind of affirmation that he's more than just a creature trying to survive out in the wild. And get this, before he ever meets another human, he spends all this time teaching a parrot to say his name. He was just that desperate for any kind of recognition, any little proof that he still existed as an individual. This profound psychological need is the crucial setup for everything that comes next.
So when Friday finally arrives, you have to understand it's not just some chance encounter. For Crusoe, it's like a solution delivered from on high, the answer to his deepest psychological crisis. But, and this is key, it's a solution he's already planned for in a very, very specific way.
You see, before the rescue, Crusoe has this dream. But he doesn't dream of a friend or of companionship. Nope. He dreams of a savage who escapes his captors, runs to him for safety, and then became my servant. This wasn't some heartfelt dream of connection. It was a cold, practical fantasy about acquiring an asset.
And that's the whole point. This dream basically pre-frames the entire encounter before it even happens. It just strips away any moral questions or ambiguity. From the very beginning, the person he's going to rescue is already cast in his mind not as a fellow human, but as an instrument to help him achieve his own ambitions.
His mindset is purely pragmatic. This person-to-be isn't a person at all. He's a collection of functions. He's a servant, a pilot to get him to the mainland, someone to find food, and a human shield against other savages. The rescue is basically a premeditated business transaction, a way to finally get off the island.
And this brings us to that famous moment of submission. From Friday's perspective, his actions are perfectly logical. This strange person just killed his enemies with fire and thunder from a metal stick. So, putting Crusoe's foot on his head, that's an intelligent act of survival. But Crusoe sees something completely different. He interprets the sheer terror as a willing, even joyful submission, a natural recognition of his own superiority. This fundamental misrecognition is the absolute cornerstone of their entire relationship.
So, with that submission secured, Crusoe immediately starts this systematic project. He doesn't just save Friday, he completely remakes him. He's forging the perfect subject by basically erasing the person who was there before.
Crusoe's so-called civilizing mission is a step-by-step process of what's known as epistemological violence. It's the act of destroying someone's entire way of knowing the world. First up, the name. He renames him Friday, forever linking his identity to Crusoe's act of saving him. Then the language, where the first and most important word he learns is master. Then the clothes, a visual sign of being assimilated. And finally the religion, completely overriding Friday's spiritual world with his own.
The end result of this whole process is that Friday just ceases to be his own person. He becomes a blank slate, a narrative void. We learn nothing about his past, his family, his own dreams or desires. His only purpose in the story is to reflect and fulfill the needs of his master. And this is the culmination of Crusoe's project. This declaration of absolute loyalty is the moment the perfect subject is fully formed. A creation whose will has been completely swallowed by the will of his sovereign.
So what does Crusoe get out of all of this? Well, Friday's perfect submission provides that final, crucial validation for Crusoe's entire identity project on the island.
See, Friday becomes the symbolic mirror that Crusoe so desperately needed. His awe, his loyalty, his eagerness to learn, it all reflects back an image of Crusoe as a wise, powerful, and divinely favored king. It's Friday's gaze that finally solidifies Crusoe's fragile ego and makes his fantasy of kingship feel like a tangible reality.
And what's so fascinating is that Crusoe is basically creating a new model of power here. Traditional kings claimed a divine right to rule based on their royal blood. Crusoe's divine right is different. It's the divine right of the self-made man, made legitimate by his tireless hard work, his productivity, and his personal faith. It's a model of power that was perfectly suited for the rising capitalist class of his time.
When he finally gets back to England, Providence delivers the ultimate reward. Turns out, his plantations in Brazil have made him fabulously wealthy. This is the final, tangible sign of God's favor, the earthly prize for his successful project of mastering himself, his island, and his new subject.
But the story ends with this profound irony. Crusoe, now immensely rich, reflects on his life, and he realizes that managing all his vast wealth brings him way more anxiety and stress than his supposedly miserable life on the island ever did. Back there, his needs and his possessions were in a perfect, simple balance. He had actually found a pure form of contentment, and he didn't even realize it. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. The very same ambition that drove him to conquer his island and build his little kingdom was the exact same ambition that made it impossible for him to enjoy the peace he had unknowingly found there. It's a powerful paradox about the nature of desire and what it truly means to be content.